She gave her kidney to save her millionaire boss. He fired her and said, "You're nothing but a—" Kendra, doubled over in pain, clutched her side as she rushed down the hospital corridor. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a sickly glow on her dark skin, accentuating the pallor that had settled in since her surgery. She stumbled, catching herself against the wall, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The incision site throbbed, a constant reminder of the sacrifice she had made. Just moments ago, her world had shattered with a single phone call. The voice on the other end, cold and detached, had informed her that she was fired. William, the CEO she had saved with her own kidney, had accused her of ulterior motives and dismissed her without a second thought. Now facing mounting medical bills and the looming threat of losing custody of her son, Kendra felt the walls closing in around her. She pushed herself off the wall, determination etched across her face. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a bustling lobby. Kendra steeled herself and marched towards the exit, each step a battle against the pain that threatened to overwhelm her. Outside, the crisp autumn air hit her like a slap. Kendra hailed a cab, her fingers trembling as she gave the driver the address of the tech company's headquarters. As the city blurred past the window, her mind raced with questions. How could William do this to her? After everything she had done, how could he cast her aside so callously? The cab pulled up to a gleaming skyscraper, its glass facade reflecting the afternoon sun. Kendra paid the driver and stepped out, her legs wobbling beneath her. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders, and strode through the revolving doors. The security guard at the desk recognized her, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Ms. Johnson, I thought you were on medical leave." "I need to see Mr. Hawthorne," Kendra said, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. "It's urgent." The guard hesitated, then nodded, handing her a visitor's badge. Kendra's fingers closed around the plastic, a stark reminder of her new status as an outsider. The elevator ride to the top floor felt interminable. When the doors finally opened, Kendra stepped into the plush executive suite. William's assistant, a young woman with perfectly coiffed hair, looked up in surprise. "Ms. Johnson, you can't be here." Kendra brushed past her, pushing open the heavy oak doors to William's office. The CEO sat behind his massive desk, his silver hair neatly combed, his tailored suit immaculate. He looked up, his blue eyes widening in shock. "Kendra, what are you doing here?" She planted her hands on his desk, leaning forward. "I want an explanation, William. Why did you fire me?" William's face hardened, his initial surprise replaced by a mask of cold indifference. "I don't owe you any explanations, Ms. Johnson. Your employment has been terminated, effective immediately. After everything I've done for you?" Kendra's voice rose, raw with disbelief. "I gave you my kidney, William. I saved your life." A flicker of something, fear, guilt, passed across William's face before his expression settled into a sneer. "And now you think you own me, is that it? You think your gift entitles you to special treatment?" Kendra recoiled as if she'd been slapped. "That's not. I know your type," William spat, rising from his chair. "Always looking for a handout, trying to manipulate your way to the top. Well, I won't be fooled. You're nothing but That's enough." A new voice cut through the tension. Kendra turned to see a young woman standing in the doorway, her face flushed with anger. She recognized her as Sarah, one of the junior lawyers from the legal department. Sarah stepped into the room, her eyes blazing. "Mr. Hawthorne, what you're saying is completely out of line. Ms. Johnson has been nothing but loyal to this company, and your accusations are baseless and discriminatory." William's face turned an alarming shade of red. "This doesn't concern you, Ms. Parker. I suggest you leave before you find yourself in the same position as Ms. Johnson." Sarah stood her ground, her chin lifted in defiance. "I'll take my chances, sir. What you're doing is wrong, and I won't stand by and watch it happen." Kendra felt a surge of gratitude towards the young lawyer. She hadn't expected to find an ally in this den of wolves. William's gaze darted between the two women, his paranoia evident in the twitching of his eye. "Get out, both of you. Security will escort you from the premises." As if on cue, Two burly security guards appeared in the doorway. Kendra allowed herself to be led out, her head held high despite the humiliation burning in her chest. Sarah followed close behind, her heels clicking against the polished floor. In the elevator, Sarah turned to Kendra, her expression softening. "I'm so sorry about what happened in there. It was completely unacceptable." Kendra nodded, too drained to speak. The adrenaline that had fueled her confrontation with William was fading, leaving her weak and shaky. Sarah pressed on, her voice low and urgent. "Listen, what Mr. Hawthorne did was illegal. You have grounds for a wrongful termination lawsuit. If you're interested, I'd like to help you fight this." Kendra looked at the young lawyer, hope flickering in her chest for the first time since that devastating phone call. "Why would you do that? You could lose your job." Sarah's jaw set in determination. "Because it's the right thing to do. And frankly, I'm sick of watching people like Mr. Hawthorne abuse their power without consequences." As they exited the building, neither woman noticed the sleek black car parked across the street, its tinted windows concealing the man who watched them with keen interest. Marcus Hawthorne, William's estranged brother and the CEO of a rival tech company, smiled to himself. The pieces were falling into place perfectly. Kendra's world continued to crumble around her in the days that followed. She stood in her tiny apartment, staring at the eviction notice taped to her door. The landlord's ultimatum echoed in her ears: pay up or get out. With her savings depleted by medical bills and no job prospects in sight, she felt the walls closing in once again. She pushed open the door, the familiar scent of home doing little to calm her frayed nerves. Michael, her 6-year-old son, looked up from his homework at the kitchen table, his brown eyes wide with concern. "Mommy, are you okay?" he asked, his small voice filled with a maturity beyond his years. Kendra forced a smile, crossing the room to ruffle his curly hair. "I'm fine, baby. Just a little tired. How's that math coming along?" Before Michael could answer, a sharp knock at the door made them both jump. Kendra's heart sank as she recognized the heavy-handed rap of her landlord, Mr. Greaves. "Stay here," she whispered to Michael, ushering him into his bedroom before opening the door. Mr. Greaves loomed in the doorway, his bulk filling the frame. "Time's up, Johnson. Where's my money?" Kendra stood her ground, though her insides quaked. "Mr. Greaves, please. I just need a little more time. I'm looking for work, and I have a lawsuit pending." The landlord's face twisted into a sneer. "I don't care about your excuses. You're 2 months behind, and I've got people lining up to pay double what you're paying. You're out. End of story." He pushed past her into the apartment, heading straight for the living room. Kendra followed, panic rising in her throat as she watched him grab a framed photo of her and Michael. "What are you doing?" she demanded, reaching for the picture. Mr. Greaves held it out of her reach. "Collateral. You want your stuff back? Pay what you owe." Something snapped inside Kendra. She lunged for the photo, her fingers closing around the frame. "Give it back. You have no right." The landlord yanked the picture away, sending Kendra stumbling. She lost her balance, crashing into the coffee table. Pain exploded in her side as she hit the ground, the surgical incision screaming in protest. "Mommy!" Michael's cry pierced the air as he ran from his room, tears streaming down his face. Mr. Greaves stepped back, his face paling as he realized the severity of the situation. I didn't mean to." Kendra struggled to her feet, one arm wrapped protectively around her midsection, the other reaching for her son. "Get out," she hissed through clenched teeth. "Get out now, or I swear I'll call the police." The landlord retreated, the stolen photo still clutched in his meaty fist. As the door slammed behind him, Kendra sank to her knees, pulling Michael close. She buried her face in his hair, trying to hide the tears that threatened to fall. "It's okay, baby," she murmured more to herself than to her son. "Everything's going to be okay." But as she held her trembling child, Kendra wondered how much more she could take before she broke completely. The next morning, Kendra sat across from Sarah in a small cafe. The young lawyer's face a mix of determination and concern as she listened to the events of the previous night. "We need to move quickly," Sarah said, her fingers flying over her laptop keyboard. "I've drafted a complaint for wrongful termination, discrimination, and retaliation. We can file it today if you're ready. Kendra nodded, her hands wrapped around a cooling cup of coffee. I don't have much choice, do I? It's either fight or lose everything. Sarah reached across the table, squeezing Kendra's hand. You're not alone in this. We're going to make them pay for what they've done. As they left the cafe, a courier approached Kendra, holding out a small package. Delivery for Kendra Johnson? Puzzled, Kendra signed for the package and tore it open. Inside was a USB drive and a note scrawled on expensive stationery. The truth will set you free. With shaking hands, Kendra plugged the drive into Sarah's laptop. What they saw made their blood run cold. Security camera footage showed William in hushed conversations with shadowy figures, exchanging envelopes in dark corners of the office. There were financial records detailing massive transfers to offshore accounts and emails discussing the systematic sabotage of company projects. Oh my God, Sarah breathed, her eyes wide. This goes way beyond wrongful termination. William's involved in something huge and dangerous. Kendra felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications. Someone's been watching me. They knew exactly where to find me, how to contact me. But why? Why give me this information? As if in answer, a black sedan pulled up beside them, its tinted windows rolling down to reveal a familiar face. Marcus Hawthorne, William's estranged brother, smiled at them from the back seat. Ladies, he said smoothly, I believe we have much to discuss. Care for a ride? Kendra and Sarah exchanged wary glances, the USB drive heavy in Kendra's hand. They stood on the precipice of a decision that would change everything. With a deep breath, Kendra nodded, and they stepped into the car, the door closing behind them with a soft, ominous click. As the sedan pulled away from the curb, Kendra couldn't shake the feeling that she had just traded one set of troubles for another, far more dangerous game. But with her son's future hanging in the balance and her own life unraveling, she knew she had no choice but to see this through to the bitter end. The sterile fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor cast harsh shadows across Dr. Evans' face as he delivered the news. Kendra gripped the edges of the examination table, her knuckles turning white as she absorbed the gravity of his words. I'm sorry, Kendra, but your remaining kidney is failing. We need to start looking for a donor immediately. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Kendra's breath caught in her throat, her mind reeling. How long do I have? Dr. Evans' eyes softened with compassion. Without a transplant? Months, maybe weeks. We'll start dialysis right away, but it's only a temporary solution. Kendra nodded mechanically, her thoughts racing to Michael, her sweet, innocent boy who needed her now more than ever. How could she tell him that Mommy might not be around much longer? As if reading her thoughts, Dr. Evans placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. I know you're worried about Michael, but right now, you need to focus on your health. Have you considered reaching out to family members for support? A bitter laugh escaped Kendra's lips. Family? It's just me and Michael, Doc. Always has been. The doctor's brow furrowed. What about the child's father? Or grandparents? Kendra shook her head, fighting back tears. Michael's father died before he was born. And my parents, well, let's just say they're not in the picture. Dr. Evans sighed, scribbling notes on his clipboard. I understand. But Kendra, you need to consider all options. With your health declining and your financial situation, have you thought about temporary foster care for Michael? The words hit Kendra like a physical blow. No, she said firmly, sliding off the examination table. That's not an option. I'll figure something out. As she left the hospital, Kendra's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Meeting with Mr. Thompson tomorrow at 2 p.m. We'll get through this. Kendra's heart sank. The custody battle loomed large, another mountain to climb when she could barely stand. But she had no choice. She would fight with every ounce of strength she had left. The next day, Kendra sat across from Mr. Thompson, the social worker's impassive face betraying nothing as he reviewed her file. Sarah sat beside her, a steady presence in the storm. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. Ms. Johnson, I'll be frank. Your current situation is concerning. Unemployed, facing eviction, and now with severe health issues. It's my job to ensure Michael's well-being. And right now, I'm not convinced you can provide a stable environment." Kendra leaned forward, her voice tight with desperation. "Mr. Thompson, I know things look bad, but I'm fighting. I have a wrongful termination lawsuit pending, and I'm on the transplant list. Michael is my whole world. I would never do anything to jeopardize his safety or happiness." The social worker's expression remained neutral. "I understand, Ms. Johnson, but intentions aren't enough. We need to see concrete improvements in your situation. Otherwise, I'll have no choice but to recommend temporary foster care for Michael." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Kendra felt the room closing in, her breath coming in short gasps. Sarah's hand on her arm anchored her, pulling her back from the brink of panic. "Mr. Thompson," Sarah interjected, her tone professional but firm, "my client is pursuing all available legal options to rectify her wrongful termination. We're confident that once the facts come to light, Kendra will be reinstated or compensated, resolving her financial concerns. As for her health, she's under excellent medical care and actively seeking a donor. Separating her from her son at this critical time would be detrimental to both of them." Mr. Thompson nodded, making a note in his file. "I appreciate your advocacy, Ms. Parker, but understand, my primary concern is Michael's welfare. I'll be scheduling a home visit next week to assess the situation further. Ms. Johnson, I strongly advise you to consider all options, including temporary placement for Michael, while you focus on your health and legal battles." As they left the office, Kendra's legs gave out. She slumped against the wall, tears streaming down her face. Sarah crouched beside her, her voice low and urgent. "Kendra, listen to me. We're not giving up. We'll fight this every step of the way. But you need to take care of yourself, too. Let me help you more. Please." Kendra looked up at the young lawyer, seeing the determination in her eyes. She nodded, too exhausted to speak. Together, they made their way out of the building, unaware of the dark sedan that pulled away from the curb as they emerged. Over the next few days, Kendra felt like she was living in a waking nightmare. Strange occurrences plagued her every move. A car with tinted windows seemed to follow her whenever she left the apartment. Her phone would ring in the middle of the night, only to fall silent when she answered. The feeling of being watched was constant, a prickling sensation at the back of her neck that never abated. She confided in Sarah, who listened with growing concern. "This goes beyond coincidence, Kendra. Someone's definitely keeping tabs on you." "But why?" The answer came in the form of a breakthrough. Sarah, digging deeper into the circumstances of Kendra's firing, uncovered discrepancies in William's alibi for that day. "He claimed to be in meetings all afternoon," Sarah explained, spreading out a timeline on Kendra's kitchen table. "But I found security footage showing him leaving the building right after your confrontation. And get this, he didn't return for hours." Kendra frowned, studying the evidence. "So he lied about where he was. But what does that prove?" Sarah's eyes gleamed with the thrill of the chase. "It proves he's hiding something, and I think it's connected to why he fired you. Kendra, what if your donation wasn't the end of his paranoia, but the beginning?" Before Kendra could respond, a sharp knock at the door made them both jump. Kendra approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. A man in a nondescript suit stood outside, his stance screaming private investigator. Heart pounding, Kendra opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" The man's hand shot out, pushing against the door. "Ms. Johnson, I have some questions for you about William Hawthorne." Adrenaline surged through Kendra's veins. She slammed the door shut, throwing the deadbolt just as the man's shoulder collided with the wood. "Sarah, run!" she shouted, grabbing her phone and keys. They fled down the fire escape, the sound of splintering wood echoing from Kendra's apartment. As they hit the street, Kendra spotted the familiar black sedan idling nearby. The driver's eyes met hers, and the chase was on. Kendra and Sarah sprinted down the sidewalk, dodging pedestrians and street vendors. The sedan crawled through traffic, never quite catching up but always within sight. Kendra's lungs burned, her incision sight screaming in protest, but fear propelled her forward. They ducked into an alley, pressing themselves against the brick wall as the sedan crawled past. Kendra's breath came in ragged gasps, spots dancing before her eyes. Sarah supported her, concern etched across her face. We need to get you to a hospital, Sarah whispered. Kendra shook her head vehemently. No, no hospitals. They'll find us there. We need to figure out what's going on. As they caught their breath, Sarah's phone buzzed. She pulled it out, her eyes widening as she read the message. Kendra, you need to see this. She handed over the phone, displaying a series of leaked internal memos from the tech company. Kendra's jaw dropped as she read. Project cancellations, inexplicable budget cuts, partnerships dissolved without warning, all bearing Williams' signature. He's sabotaging the company, Kendra breathed. But why? This doesn't make any sense. Sarah took back the phone, her fingers flying over the keys. It's more than paranoia. There's a pattern here, a method to the madness. Williams' actions are too precise, too calculated. Someone's pulling his strings, and I think I know who. She turned the screen back to Kendra, displaying a photo of William shaking hands with a familiar face. Marcus Hawthorne, his estranged brother and rival CEO. The rivalry was a smokescreen, Sarah explained, her voice tight with excitement and fear. They've been working together all along, dismantling the company from the inside. And you, Kendra, you were the wild card they never saw coming. Kendra's mind reeled, struggling to process the implications. But why target me? I'm nobody, just an assistant who saved William's life, Sarah finished. Think about it. Your act of kindness threw a wrench in their plans. William's gratitude, his trust in you, it threatened their whole operation. They had to discredit you, isolate you. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Kendra leaned against the alley wall, suddenly lightheaded. So all of this, my firing, the harassment, the custody battle, it's all been orchestrated? Sarah nodded grimly. And I'd bet my law degree that Marcus is the one behind that USB drive we received. He's playing both sides, manipulating everyone like puppets on a string. A wave of nausea washed over Kendra, her knees buckling. Sarah caught her, easing her to the ground. Kendra, stay with me. But the world was fading, darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision. The last thing Kendra saw before losing consciousness was Sarah's panicked face, her lips forming words Kendra couldn't hear. When Kendra awoke, the harsh glare of hospital lights assaulted her eyes. She blinked, disoriented, as a familiar face swam into focus. Dr. Evans stood over her, his expression grave. Welcome back, Kendra. You gave us quite a scare. Kendra tried to sit up, but a wave of dizziness forced her back down. Michael, she croaked. Where's Michael? Dr. Evans exchanged a glance with someone out of Kendra's line of sight. Michael is safe. But Kendra, we need to talk about your condition. Your kidney function has deteriorated significantly. We've started emergency dialysis, but without a transplant soon. He trailed off, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Kendra closed her eyes, fighting back tears. She had come so far, fought so hard. It couldn't end like this. A gentle hand touched her arm. Kendra opened her eyes to see Sarah, her face etched with worry and determination. We're not giving up, Kendra. I've uncovered evidence that could blow this whole conspiracy wide open. But we need your help. Do you feel strong enough to make a statement? Kendra nodded weakly. I'll do whatever it takes. For Michael. For justice. As Sarah began recording on her phone, Kendra summoned every ounce of strength she had left. She spoke of her kidney donation, of William's inexplicable turn against her, of the strange occurrences and mounting pressure. With each word, her voice grew stronger, fueled by righteous anger and a mother's fierce love. They tried to break me, Kendra concluded, her eyes blazing with defiance. But they underestimated the power of truth, and the lengths a mother will go to protect her child. Sarah stopped the recording, her face alight with purpose. This is a Kendra, the key to unraveling everything. I'm going to take this to the board of directors immediately. With this and the evidence we've gathered, we can expose William and Marcus's scheme once and for all. As Sarah hurried out, promise of justice on the horizon, Kendra sank back into her pillows. She had done all she could. Now it was a race against time. For her health, for her son, for the truth to finally come to light. In the corridor outside, unbeknownst to Kendra, Two figures huddled in intense conversation. William Hawthorne, his face haggard and haunted, listened as Marcus laid out the next phase of their plan. "It's almost over, brother," Marcus soothed, his voice silky with false comfort. "Just one more piece to move, and the game is ours." William nodded, his eyes darting nervously to Kendra's room. "And the girl? What about her son?" Marcus's smile was cold, calculating. "Loose ends, William. Nothing more. Now, are you ready to play your part?" As William steeled himself for what was to come, the hospital corridors echoed with the beeping of machines and the quiet sobs of a mother fighting for her life and her child's future. The rhythmic beeping of medical equipment filled Kendra's hospital room, a constant reminder of her precarious condition. She lay in bed, her dark skin ashen against the stark white sheets, fighting to keep her eyes open. Dr. Evans stood at the foot of her bed, his face etched with concern as he reviewed her latest test results. "Kendra, I won't sugarcoat this," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Your kidney function has dropped to critical levels. We need to find a donor immediately, or—" He trailed off, the unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Kendra nodded weakly, too exhausted to speak. Her gaze drifted to the window, where the setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. She wondered if Michael was watching the same sunset, wherever he was. A soft knock at the door drew their attention. Sarah entered, her usually impeccable appearance slightly disheveled, dark circles under her eyes betraying nights of sleepless research. "Dr. Evans, may I have a moment with Kendra?" she asked, clutching a folder to her chest. The doctor nodded, patting Kendra's hand before leaving the room. Sarah approached the bed, her face a mix of determination and worry. "How are you holding up?" she asked, taking a seat beside Kendra. Kendra managed a weak smile. "I've been better. Any news on Michael?" Sarah's expression tightened. "The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow. Mr. Thompson is pushing hard for temporary foster care, given your condition." Tears welled in Kendra's eyes. "I can't lose him, Sarah. He's all I have left." "We're not giving up," Sarah assured her, squeezing her hand. "In fact, I may have found something that could turn this whole case around." She opened the folder, spreading out documents on the bed. "I've been digging into William's connections, and I found this." Kendra leaned forward, squinting at the papers. Her eyes widened as she recognized a familiar logo, that of Marcus's rival tech company. "Is that?" Sarah nodded grimly. "Financial records showing significant transfers between William's personal accounts and Marcus's company. It goes back months, predating your kidney donation." Kendra's mind reeled. But they're supposed to be rivals. Why would William be funneling money to Marcus's company? "I think they're working together," Sarah explained, her voice low and urgent. "William's erratic behavior, the sabotage of his own company, it's all part of a larger scheme. They're trying to drive the stock price down so Marcus can swoop in and buy it at a fraction of its worth." The pieces began to fall into place in Kendra's mind. "And my donation, it threw a wrench in their plans somehow?" Sarah nodded. "Your act of kindness created a public relations boost for the company. It made William look sympathetic, trustworthy. They couldn't risk you being close to him, potentially uncovering their plot." Kendra felt a surge of anger, momentarily overshadowing her physical pain. "So they destroyed my life, threatened my son, all for some corporate takeover?" "It's despicable," Sarah agreed, her jaw set in determination. "But now we have evidence. We can expose them, clear your name, and hopefully save your job and custody of Michael." As they discussed their next steps, neither woman noticed the shadow that passed by the partially open door or the figure that lingered just out of sight, listening intently. Across town, in the opulent office of Hawthorne Tech, William paced back and forth, his usual composure shattered. Marcus lounged in a leather chair, watching his brother's distress with barely concealed amusement. "Pull yourself together, William," Marcus drawled. "Everything's going according to plan." William whirled on him, eyes wild. "According to plan? That woman is dying because of us. And her son. Christ, Marcus, how far are we willing to go?" Marcus's expression hardened. "As far as necessary. We're too close to back out now. Once the takeover is complete, we'll be untouchable. A few casualties along the way are unfortunate, but unavoidable. Casualties? William's voice rose. These are people's lives we're destroying. Marcus stood, his tall frame looming over his brother. And what about the lives we'll improve with the advancements our merged companies can create? The greater good, William. That's what we're fighting for. William slumped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I don't know if I can do this anymore, Marcus. The guilt, it's eating me alive. Marcus's voice softened, taking on a cajoling tone. It's almost over, brother. Just a little longer, and all of this will have been worth it. Trust me. As William nodded reluctantly, neither man noticed the blinking light of the security camera in the corner of the room, silently recording their conversation. Back at the hospital, Sarah prepared to leave for the night. Get some rest, Kendra. I'll be at the custody hearing first thing in the morning. Then I'm going to confront William with what we've found. Kendra reached out, grasping Sarah's hand. Be careful. We don't know how far they're willing to go to keep this quiet. Sarah squeezed her hand reassuringly. I can handle William. You just focus on getting stronger. We're going to win this, Kendra. I promise. As Sarah left, Kendra settled back against her pillows, her mind racing despite her exhaustion. She closed her eyes, trying to quiet the storm of thoughts, when a familiar voice made them snap open. Hello, Kendra. William stood in the doorway, his usual polished appearance marred by dark circles under his eyes and a day's worth of stubble on his chin. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Kendra's heart raced, her hand hovering over the call button. What are you doing here? William held up his hands in a placating gesture. I'm not here to hurt you. I needed to see you. To explain. Explain? Kendra's voice dripped with bitterness. Explain how you ruined my life? Threaten my son? There's nothing you can say that will make this right, William. He flinched at her words, sinking into the chair beside her bed. You're right. What I've done, it's unforgivable. But you need to understand, Kendra. Marcus, he has leverage over me. He threatened my family, my legacy. I thought I was protecting them, but now... Kendra studied his face, seeing the anguish etched in every line. Despite everything, a part of her wanted to believe him. Why are you telling me this now? William met her gaze, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. Because I can't do it anymore. The guilt is tearing me apart. Your kindness, your sacrifice, it made me realize how far I've strayed from the person I used to be. I want to make things right, but I don't know how. Before Kendra could respond, the door burst open. Sarah stood there, her face flushed with anger. Get away from her, she shouted, moving to place herself between Kendra and William. William stood, backing away with his hands raised. I'm not here to cause trouble. I was just trying to silence her, Sarah accused. I know about your scheme with Marcus. It's over, William. We have evidence, and we're going to the board with it. William's face paled. You don't understand. Marcus, A slow clap from the doorway cut him off. Marcus sauntered into the room, his handsome face twisted in a cruel smile. Well, isn't this a touching scene? The noble CEO confessing his sins. The plucky lawyer ready to save the day. And poor, dying Kendra, the pawn in our little game. Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. It's over, Marcus. We know everything. The financial transfers, the sabotage, all of it. You're going to prison for this. Marcus laughed, the sound chilling in its lack of warmth. Oh, you naive little girl. Do you really think your evidence will stand up against an army of lawyers and a fortune in hush money? By this time tomorrow, Kendra will have tragically succumbed to her illness. William will be ousted as CEO due to mental health concerns. And you, well, let's just say car accidents happen all the time in this city. The room fell silent, the weight of Marcus's threats hanging heavy in the air. Kendra's mind raced, searching for a way out of this nightmare. Then a small movement caught her eye. Through the partially open door, she saw a figure in the hallway, Dr. Evans, his eyes wide with shock as he listened to Marcus's confession. In that moment, Kendra made a decision. She locked eyes with the doctor, giving an almost imperceptible nod. Dr. Evans disappeared from view, and Kendra turned her attention back to the room. You won't get away with this, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. People will ask questions. The truth will come out. Marcus approached her bed, looming over her with a predatory grin. Oh, Kendra, so brave, even at the end. But you see, dead women tell no tales. And in a few moments, that's exactly what you'll be. He reached for her foreline, but before he could touch it, the door burst open. Dr. Evans rushed in, followed by hospital security and 2 police officers. Step away from the patient, one officer shouted, drawing his weapon. Marcus froze, his composure cracking for the first time. This is a misunderstanding. I was just confessing to corporate espionage, attempted murder, and conspiracy. Dr. Evans cut in. I heard everything, and I've already sent the recording to the hospital's legal team. As the officers moved to handcuff Marcus, William slumped against the wall, a mix of relief and despair on his face. Sarah rushed to Kendra's side, gripping her hand tightly. It's over, she whispered. We did it. Kendra nodded, tears streaming down her face. But as the adrenaline faded, she felt a sharp pain in her side. The world began to spin, voices becoming distant and muffled. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Dr. Evans rushing to her side, barking orders to the medical team that flooded into the room. As consciousness slipped away, Kendra's final thought was of Michael and the hope that she would live to see him again. The scene faded to black, leaving the fate of Kendra, William, and the others hanging in the balance, setting the stage for the final, climactic act of their intertwined stories. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room flickered to life as Kendra's eyes fluttered open. The steady beep of monitors filled the air, a grim reminder of her precarious condition. As her vision cleared, she saw Sarah slumped in a chair beside her bed, dark circles under her eyes betraying nights of sleepless vigil. Sarah, Kendra's voice was barely a whisper, but it was enough to rouse the young lawyer. Sarah jolted awake, relief washing over her face. Kendra, thank God. You've been out for days. We weren't sure if. She trailed off, unable to voice the fear that had gripped them all. Kendra tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that shot through her body. Michael, she gasped. Where's Michael? Sarah's expression tightened, and Kendra felt her heart plummet. I'm so sorry, Kendra. The custody hearing. Mr. Thompson pushed it through while you were unconscious. Michael's been placed in temporary foster care. The words hit Kendra like a physical blow. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears. No, this can't be happening. Sarah leaned forward, grasping Kendra's hand. We're not giving up. I've filed an appeal, and with Marcus's arrest, we have new evidence to present. But Kendra, you need to focus on getting better. Your kidney function is still critical. Kendra shook her head, a fire igniting in her eyes. I can't just lie here while my son is out there, alone and scared. We need to do something, Sarah. Now. As if on cue, Dr. Evans entered the room, his face grave. Kendra, I'm glad to see you're awake. But I'm afraid I have some difficult news. Your kidney function has deteriorated further. Without a transplant in the next 48 hours. He didn't need to finish the sentence. The implication hung heavy in the air. Kendra felt a surge of desperation, tinged with a fierce determination. Then we don't have time to waste, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Sarah, help me up. We're getting out of here. Sarah's eyes widened in alarm. Kendra, you can't be serious. In your condition. My condition is exactly why we need to act now, Kendra interrupted. I'm not spending my last hours in this bed. I'm going to fight for my son and for the truth. Dr. Evans stepped forward, concern etched on his face. Kendra, I strongly advise against this. The strain on your body could be fatal. Kendra met his gaze, her resolve unwavering. And staying here, knowing I've lost everything I've fought for, would kill me just as surely. Please, Dr. Evans, help me do this. The doctor hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. I can't condone this, but I understand. I'll give you something for the pain and disconnect you from the monitors. But Kendra, you need to promise me you'll come back at the first sign of trouble. As Dr. Evans prepared the necessary medications, Sarah helped Kendra into a wheelchair. The simple act of sitting up left Kendra breathless, but she pushed through the pain, focusing on the image of Michael's face. Within minutes, they were moving through the hospital corridors, Sarah pushing the wheelchair while Dr. Evans ran interference with the staff. As they reached the parking garage, Kendra spotted a familiar figure leaning against a sleek black car. William straightened as they approached, his face a mask of guilt and determination. "I thought you might try something like this. I'm here to help." Sarah tensed, positioning herself protectively in front of Kendra. "Haven't you done enough?" Kendra held up a hand, studying William's face. "Why should we trust you?" William met her gaze, his eyes filled with remorse. "Because I owe you everything, Kendra. My life, my company, and because I want to make things right. I know where Marcus is hiding, and I have evidence that will bring him down for good." Kendra exchanged a look with Sarah, who nodded reluctantly. "All right," Kendra said, "but one wrong move, and we're done." "Understood." William nodded, helping them into the car. As they pulled out of the parking garage, Kendra felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. They were racing against time, her body, and the powerful forces aligned against them. But for the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope. The city blurred past as William navigated through traffic, heading towards the outskirts of town. He filled them in on what he'd discovered, a secret facility where Marcus had been conducting illegal experiments, using the company's resources to develop technology that could manipulate financial markets on a global scale. That's why he needed control of both companies, William explained, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "With the combined resources and my reputation, he could implement his system without raising suspicion." As they approached a nondescript warehouse, Kendra felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. She gripped the armrest, fighting to stay conscious. "Kendra." Sarah's voice was laced with concern. "I'm fine," Kendra managed, though the words came out weaker than she intended. "We need to finish this." They parked a short distance from the warehouse, William producing a key card he'd stolen from Marcus. "This should get us in, but we need to be careful. Marcus likely has security." As they helped Kendra from the car, a figure emerged from the shadows. Mr. Thompson, the social worker, approached with his hands raised. "I followed you from the hospital," he explained quickly. I've made a terrible mistake. I want to help make this right." Kendra studied him, seeing the genuine remorse in his eyes. She nodded, allowing him to join their unlikely group. They moved towards the warehouse, William using the key card to bypass the security system. As they entered, they found themselves in a vast space filled with servers and complex machinery. At the center stood Marcus, surrounded by computer screens displaying financial data from around the world. He turned as they entered, his face twisting into a sneer. Well, the gang's all here. Come to witness the culmination of my life's work." William stepped forward, his voice steady. "It's over, Marcus. We have evidence of everything. The corporate espionage, the illegal experiments, all of it. Surrender now, and maybe we can work out a deal." Marcus laughed, the sound echoing through the cavernous space. "Oh, William, always the idealist. Do you really think your evidence will stand up against the fortune I've amassed? The connections I've cultivated? In a matter of hours, my system will go live, and I'll have control over the global economy. No one will be able to touch me." As he spoke, Kendra noticed movement behind the servers. Security guards were closing in, weapons drawn. She caught Sarah's eye, silently communicating the danger. In that moment, Kendra made a decision. Using every ounce of strength she had left, she pushed herself out of the wheelchair, stumbling towards the central computer. "Kendra, no!" Sarah cried, but it was too late. Kendra reached the console, her trembling hands hovering over the keyboard. "One more step, Marcus, and I'll shut it all down." Marcus's eyes widened in panic. "You don't know what you're doing. You'll crash the entire system." "Maybe," Kendra said, her voice stronger than she felt. "But I'm guessing that's better than letting you control it." As Marcus lunged towards her, several things happened at once. William tackled his brother, sending them both crashing to the ground. Sarah and Mr. Thompson moved to intercept the security guards, creating a chaotic melee. Kendra's fingers flew over the keyboard, using the knowledge she'd gained as William's assistant to navigate the system. She found the core program and, with a silent prayer, initiated a complete shutdown. The screens around them flickered and died, plunging the warehouse into darkness. Emergency lights kicked on, casting an eerie glow over the scene. Marcus howled in rage, breaking free from William's grasp. He charged towards Kendra, murder in his eyes. But before he could reach her, a shot rang out. Marcus stumbled, clutching his shoulder. Everyone turned to see Mr. Thompson holding a small pistol, his hands shaking, but his aim true. "That's enough," the social worker said, his voice firm. "It's over." As if on cue, the sound of sirens filled the air. Police cars and FBI vehicles surrounded the warehouse, agents pouring in with weapons drawn. In the chaos that followed, Kendra felt her strength finally give out. She collapsed, the world fading to black around her. She awoke to the steady beep of hospital monitors, a sound that had become all too familiar. But this time, as her eyes fluttered open, she saw a sight that made her heart soar. Michael sat beside her bed, his small hand clutching hers. "Mommy," he said, his voice trembling with hope and fear. Kendra squeezed his hand, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I'm here, baby. I'm here." Sarah appeared in the doorway, her face beaming. "He's been waiting for you to wake up." Mr. Thompson expedited the custody reversal as soon as Marcus was arrested. As Kendra hugged her son close, reveling in his familiar warmth, Dr. Evans entered the room. His face was serious, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Kendra, I have some news," he said. "We found a compatible kidney donor." Kendra's breath caught in her throat. "Who?" William stepped into view, his arm in a sling from the fight with Marcus. "Me," he said simply. "It's the least I can do, after everything." Kendra felt overwhelmed by emotion, gratitude, relief, and a cautious optimism for the future. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with tears. In the weeks that followed, as Kendra recovered from the transplant surgery, the full story of Marcus's scheme came to light. With William's testimony and the evidence gathered by Sarah and the authorities, Marcus was sentenced to years in prison. William, true to his word, not only ensured Kendra's reinstatement at the company, but promoted her to a senior position. He implemented new policies promoting diversity and equality, using the scandal as a catalyst for positive change. 6 months later, Kendra stood before a crowd of supporters, Michael by her side and Sarah beaming from the front row. She had been asked to speak at a conference on corporate responsibility and social justice. Taking a deep breath, Kendra began her speech. "A year ago, I stood in this city's hospital, offering my kidney to a man I barely knew. I did it because I believed in the power of compassion, in the idea that one small act of kindness could make a difference." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. What I didn't realize was how that act would change my life. In the months that followed, I faced challenges I never could have imagined. There were times when I wanted to give up, when the weight of it all seemed too much to bear. Kendra's voice grew stronger, filled with conviction. "But I stand before you today, not as a victim, but as a survivor. As a mother who fought for her child. As a woman who refused to be silenced or broken." She smiled, squeezing Michael's hand. "They tried to break me," she declared, her voice ringing through the auditorium. "But they underestimated the power of a mother's love and the strength of the human spirit. They underestimated the change that can come when people stand together against injustice." As applause filled the room, Kendra felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been long and painful, but she had emerged stronger, surrounded by a community of supporters and with a renewed sense of purpose. She looked down at Michael, seeing in his eyes the promise of a brighter future, not just for them, but for all those who dared to stand up, speak out, and fight for what was right.